a non-inclusive funnel from youth all the way through to later, more specialized stages in a tech career. We see this phenomenon quite clearly versus comparative ecosystems. For instance, the percentage of women graduating from STEM education is lower in the Netherlands compared to France or the UK. When women do take the step to launch a company, the tech industry makes it harder for them to work in compared to men. For example, when attracting venture capital, women still only receive 4% of the Dutch investments. A mere 16% of VC firms have invested in startups with female co-founders. And this is hardly surprising since 87% of Dutch VC don't even have female investors on their team. So to recap, a lack of attraction and inclusion of new talent, exiting existing talent, and missing the opportunity to turn talent into new investors and founders are important reasons why the flywheel isn't spinning yet. So yes, we've heard that there are, the market is super competitive at the moment, and I think that's only been amplified in the COVID era. And there's two areas that we see as opportunities to focus on. One of them is making share options more of a necessary tool for compensation and attracting the top talent. But that's gaining traction in the Netherlands. But in all honesty, I don't think that it's really that standardized here yet. And the second thing that is a sort of opportunity, a real opportunity, is looking at the lack of representation, the underrepresentation within STEM and entrepreneurship of minorities and females. You know, those are, I think, super relevant, super interesting, also a bit tough in tackling those from an ecosystem perspective. In my opinion, it will require a lot of coordination across different stakeholders. But I'd love to start with you, Janneke, and hear your thoughts on what are some of the changes that you'd like to see in order to address some of these challenges / opportunities in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few actually, and I think what you also saw in the numbers is that there's still very large untapped talent pools. Yeah. In women and minorities, and I think it's also a matter of hiring them, not talking too much about it, but just actually hiring them. Yes. So I think that's one super obvious one. I think when you look at education, there's also major wins to be gained there, and that starts at elementary school. If we introduce coding, 21st century skills there, then it becomes natural for kids, boys and girls, and it's equal opportunity for everybody, because currently if you have a parent like me, you're fine, because I know it's important, I have the money to make sure that my kids learn all these things, but not everybody has that. So if you want all the kids to have the same opportunity, you need to start there. But also looking at initiatives like CODEM, where they do educate for the shortage we have today, they don't get accredited. So also the government is really difficult in accepting new forms of education.
Good point.
So yeah, there's a lot to win there. And then for the tax incentives for making people actually part of a company, I can't believe that I read that it's been delayed because the government thinks that Coolblue should not be able to profit from that because they're already too large. And that's so Dutch, because Coolblue is competing with Amazon. Coolblue isn't big. Coolblue is big in the Netherlands, but if you compare them to Amazon, they are super small. And so for making these decisions, I think you should look at the international field that we need to compete in, and also not assume bad intent, but see what the upside could be if you just do this today instead of talking about it for another year and making an impossible regulation that nobody can actually work with.
Yeah, I think those are all really amazing points and really topical. And I'd actually like to transition to Constantine a little bit, just picking up on that tax policy and the sort of stagnancy we see sometimes in the government. Techleap is in contact with a lot of the governmental agencies and political parties that could move these topics along a little bit more quickly. So curious what you think needs to be done, and how do you look at these situations like what happens in delays or deprioritizations around tax policy changes that could improve the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of momentum now, and because the first proposal was just about the moment where you actually are taxed, so and providing some more freedom there. That was indeed blocked, actually not by the government, by Parliament, by some idea that it should only work for small companies and not big companies. There's a kind of a fundamental mistake, and maybe we didn't explain well enough, or the government didn't explain well enough what this whole thing is about. It's about employees participating in the upside of a company. So this is a deeply socialistic kind of perspective. Everybody's participating when the company does well, and it's the best way for startups to compete with employers like big tech or other companies, and to attract talent to come here and also retain it. So it's an incredibly important tool, and I guess we haven't explained ourselves well enough how important this is. But it now actually gives us an opportunity to not only fix the time of taxation or the moment of taxation, but also the percentage, because it's pretty unfair that an employee pays more taxes than either the owners or the investors over the same shares.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to explain this. And so maybe we hope, and we're going to actually push for this, and we're seeing a lot of response as well in the government to now actually fix this once and for all and come up with a very competitive regulation and fiscal treatment of share options.
Love to hear that. When the sort of deprioritization was announced back in December, there were about 25 or so entrepreneurs, well-known entrepreneurs, that signed a letter, myself included, that was sort of protesting this fact and the need to revisit it. So hopefully that will have some sort of an effect. Maybe just a really quick transition to Derek. We're going to be talking about this more in our breakout session around options, but from a founder's perspective, how do you look at options as a way to incentivize and attract really top talent for Castor?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing tool, and I think every founder should really seriously consider endorsing it. You're asking people to join a startup that's always going to be chaotic. They're always going to have to some extent, fend for themselves and figure things out. Even if, like Castor, you offer proper work-life balance, it's still an intense job, and I think you should reward people for being on that journey with you. Like that's the point. There's the upside potential of those options, and I think we need to really reinforce that message. Starting with education, like you can actually be part of something, and that can have an enormous upside. There's risk to it, but it's not something you can get elsewhere. So we should really endorse it. And honestly, for us, if we hire talent in the American markets, like we can't go without it. It's just impossible. Yeah, right? In the Netherlands, it's kind of like a nice thing. Over there, it's just crucial, and that's already sort of indicating how disjointed and broken the system is, because it needs to become normal, and people need to, in the Dutch market, go to their employers and be like, I want a part of this company because I'm working my ass off. Yeah.
We're going to really, I love the enthusiasm, and it's going to be a super amazing conversation later on. We're going to be joined also by Frederick, the CEO of SecFi, who has a lot of technical knowledge. So all those founders who are thinking about implementing ESOPs, join us for that breakout session. But to sort of move things along to the next challenge, we've also got one focused on the funding gap. So we have a video that's explaining from a statistical perspective how we stand in the Dutch tech ecosystem. So let's have a look at that now. Another key driver to make the flywheel spin and build startups that scale is access to funding. After we're done celebrating the spike in VC funding, we should look at the details. This exposes some fundamental weaknesses in the supply of funding in the Netherlands. First, a few very large funding rounds are responsible for this year's growth. But this isn't a uniquely Dutch challenge. This trend of exponential growth dominated by big rounds was common all across Europe. However, the early stage funding gap in the Netherlands got bigger. At its base, Dutch tech became less well-funded in 2021. The number and quantity of early-stage investments remains low, making it harder for startups to grow. As the Dutch startup ecosystem is growing, the number should increase considerably, but it's not, thereby choking the supply of new startups and technologies entering the market. If we look at how the money enters our ecosystem, we observe that much of the early risk is taken by Dutch public and private investors, and the value is captured by foreign investors in the later stage rounds. Typically, Dutch investors are looking for mature proof points and are moving to invest in later stages and investing outside of the Netherlands. The collective effect has amplified the funding problem of early stage startups. With some of the largest pension funds in the world, the Netherlands could be a leading force in venture capital. However, pension funds and other institutional investors still only invest 0.01% in VCs. and VCs on average only participated in a total of 100 million euros in deals. This is perplexing because the high returns of VCs and the impact startups are making on massive societal transitions are very much aligned with pension investment goals. Finally, the Netherlands should improve its community of angel investors. As of right now, we're already leaving a potential of more than 600 million euros of investments on the table. A quarter of angels mention potential taxation as too high, as investments aren't actively supported through fiscal or other measures. A lack of support for angel investors not only reduces the flow of early-stage capital, it also means that knowledge, experience, and networks of operator angels are not shared. And thus, the much sought-after flywheel does not spin. So I didn't find those stats too surprising, especially around the early funding gap. I'm part of an angel group called Operator Exchange, and it's really fueled a lot by empathy for the founder experience and this desire to give back from a capital perspective and a knowledge perspective. On the tax incentives point, I see that there's a lot of other countries that do well in terms of they've created great policies for tax relief, such as Sweden, France, UK, Germany, and I think if we were able to adopt some of those policies, that would actually stimulate angels to invest more, not necessarily to invest. These are people who are already investing, and having some form of tax relief would allow them to increase the budget that they allocate to their startup portfolio. So that's from my perspective on the angel side, which really does the very earliest checks in many cases. But Derek, you have you're a great shining star in terms of how to navigate the funding process. You started your company in the Netherlands. You've now scaled internationally. You mentor other founders. What's your advice on how to navigate this early stage funding gap in the Netherlands?
Well, I think, again, start with having a great sort of business plan and validate that. I think if you consider your only market the Netherlands, then you're going to have a problem. You need to look at also competitors internationally. So I think that is very important. Again, I think if you have an amazing plan and an amazing team, investors will come. The angels will be like, tax. Who cares about tax? That's like the upside is just incredible. So again, I think that is critical. And then of course, use these networks that we have here. People like Janneke, people like you actually, who are really well connected, and get some help. Get some help. Find someone like me. So how did I start? There's so many ways to find angels, to find pre-seed funds. I think it all starts with again thinking big, having the right plans, and then being very deliberate. Just be very deliberate in who you reach out to, who you network with, and let them help you get access to the right people who believe in you and who believe in your story.
And I think earlier you also said, don't be afraid to look internationally for investments, even at the seed stage. And I think I'd love to hear Janneke's point on that. How do you, as a Dutch-based VC that does international investments, how do you see the competitive landscape for VC investors here in the Netherlands? And do you see internationals as competitors or collaborators? What's your approach with Capital T?
I want to make one comment on Derek's point. Please. Because I think you do need to have a great plan, but it's also true that the funding gap exists for women and minorities, and a great plan is not always enough.
That's really
true. So we need to continue to be aware of the bias that's in the system and the lack of female and minority investors.
Thanks for making that point.
Who emphasize that. So
and I would like to join that certain categories of companies, and we'll come to that on deep tech, obviously require much more funding in a stage where there's still a big technology risk, and it will be very difficult to find people that just want a financial return. You have to find people that share the vision as well.
Yeah, very true.
But in terms of the competition, I think it's truly great that international VCs come to the Netherlands and to Europe in general. It shows the potential that's here and the excitement about the companies that are being built here. So I think that's all great news. And I also like working with them. We try to cooperate with them when we can. And I like the fact that they make Dutch VCs up their game.
Yeah.
I think there's still some practices in the Netherlands, like milestones and ridiculous liquidation preferences that are not of this time anymore. So I think having an outside forced to remove that from the ecosystem, I think is really important and great, because now through these ridiculous terms, sometimes you just put up entrepreneurs for disaster.
Yeah.
And that should never ever be the role
I hear
of
that
an
often.
investor.
Yeah. It's not a nice spot to position our founders for success. So,
Yeah.
but
No, and working with them also means a different network, an international network. So we actually are really happy with the international VCs in Europe.
Great, a nice model for other Dutch VCs to try to aspire to. I want to just shift quickly before we move to the next topic onto pension funds, because I thought that was a really interesting statistic, 0.01%.
And with interesting, you mean horrible?
Yeah, yeah, that's my American euphemistic way of
it's more
saying
British
horrible.
euphemistic,
Yeah, exactly. But Janneke, I mean, you deal with LPs all the time, and did you raise 50 million, I believe, with Capital T? So how do you see this? Is it an opportunity for the pension funds?
No, it's definitely an opportunity. It's a missed opportunity that they don't already join. They can really contribute to the big shifts that we're trying to make, and the big also issues we're facing, the transitions we need to go through. They can really contribute to that. So for me, it's really difficult to grasp that they don't put more. Also, the fact that every other country is doing that, and the upsides they can create for themselves, but also for the country and the ecosystem, it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I think it's really weird to see that Dutch VC find it nearly impossible to raise with Dutch LP. So you have family offices and so, but the institutional investors are just not there. And you imagine that if they would only invest 1%, the Netherlands would have been the biggest VC market in Europe. And it's not only a lost potential in investing in companies. So, and we're saying, all these transitions in energy, in food, logistics, all the stuff that we really want, and that's what's driven by these companies, but also the VC sector itself. And it's also not only by investing in Dutch VC, but also other European VC, American VC, and becoming an active LP in that asset class. It's a kind of a no-brainer, but it's been one that's been very hard to solve. We got a medic here. Maybe we can, maybe you can do diagnostics and some kind of medication. How we can actually get them to participate as well. And there are a few examples like MN and APG that are kind of stepping into this space, but still very limited.
Baby steps.
Hopefully this is a sort of call to action for those in the pension fund industry. And I'm curious also, though, if there's the ability to look to pension funds in other countries as well. I
mean, Sweden has been incredible, the amount of pension money going in. And then if you look at endowments in like the Yale endowment in the US, what they're doing, that really a significant part is invested in VC, and it's done really well for them.
That's, hopefully in the next year's look back, we'll be able to have some traction above that 0.01% investment. I would love to transition to our next topic, because there's quite a few opportunities for us in Dutch tech. And the next one is focusing on deep tech as an industry to really support. So let's have a look at the video. Currently, one of the star sectors in tech is deep tech. When we talk about global challenges, Dutch solutions, we're in fact mostly talking about deep tech. These are the companies that create revolutionary technology, solve real problems for society, and base their work on hard science. We're talking about the next ASMLs, Unilevers, and Philips, developing new vaccines, new energy solutions, climate-resistant foods, bio-based chemicals, the next generation of chips and computers. And they're locating themselves close to tech universities in Delft, Twente, Eindhoven, and Wageningen. The Netherlands is well positioned to be a leader in deep tech, with an excellent scientific basis, filling more patents per capita than France and the UK, with many patents in groundbreaking tech fields like quantum technologies. A culture of collaboration and an extensive system of more than 100 support programs for startups, guiding entrepreneurs through the incubation period. Though their development is timely and costly, deep tech startups have intellectual property and assets to defend a market position for the Netherlands. That's why it's so pressing that the funding gap is particularly tough for these businesses. Other countries are outperforming us, and the impact and economic value of Dutch deep tech remains untapped. You can see this clearly in fields such as quantum computing, where the Netherlands is in the early stage of startup activity, whereas US businesses are already raising hundreds of millions. But it isn't only funding holding deep tech ventures back. Dutch deep tech startups need higher ambition to succeed, with serial entrepreneurs leading the way. Many first-time entrepreneurs face a very steep learning curve. Founding teams are often more focused on science and technology than on market developments and growing their businesses. Teams lack diversity in skills, gender, and backgrounds to solve a wide variety of obstacles. They get stuck in the tech transfer system with its IP rules, disincentives, and university politics. A first priority should be creating the best possible environment and infrastructure for product and business development. Currently, the tech transfer support system would benefit from more shared open R&D infrastructures, better coordination, and more professionalism. A second priority should be to ensure that tech transfer enables scientific entrepreneurs to build their experience and entrepreneurial skill set. As of right now, there's a shortage of repeat entrepreneurs in the scientific community, and we lack seasoned senior executives that know both the tech and aspects of finance and business development. The momentum for change is growing with new private and public deep tech funds and programs like the Faculty of Impact and Science to Impact. We might just be ready to build one of the strongest deep tech sectors in Europe if we can go from science to global impact. Deep tech. Now, I find this to be such a fascinating sector. It can be intimidating for folks, though. But Dirk, you are a shining example for deep tech. So I would love to hear a little bit about your own personal experiences and best practices for the Tech Transfer Office and academia. What do they need to adopt in order to best support and position our deep tech startups for success?
Yeah. I think this is a very important topic, and I was just telling you how this video got me all agitated because I remember vividly my years in academia. So I did a PhD after I studied medicine, and I actually built a solution to help physicians make better decisions about patients. And we were working with a commercial partner there, and I was pushing because I already had a little business on the side. Gastro had already started, was my little side project. I was pushing to say, hey, maybe we can spin this out, because I was looking at the US, and I knew like half the funding, I think, a big percentage of funding from the universities comes from the startups that have spun out of there. And I think it's a very healthy sort of positive spiral. So I was saying, maybe we can put this in a BV, or we can sort of spin it out, turn it into a real company, have lasting impact. And it was just like, no, that's difficult, and we can't make money. If we make money, it will, it will look weird. So I was like, but we need a business model, right? How can we sustain innovation without a business model? How can we have global impact, like we said in the movie, without actually thinking about how we're going to bring it beyond our borders as a company? And sort of all my experiences in academia have been really this attitude is of like, we'll just focus on the science and let others do the work. No, that's not how it works. Like writing papers does not actually solve the world's problems. You need to turn it into action. And also, just later in stage, when because I continue to work with academia, I think it's very important to have a link between the business life and academia. I have a PhD student who's graduating in 3 months, defending his thesis. But just working with the university is so hard, because they come to you and say, oh, as soon as someone starts working with us like together, we're going to claim the IP. And at some point I said, like, you know what? We'll just pay him ourselves. We're not working with you, not officially. So we'll work informally. It just blows your mind. Like, it makes it so unattractive.
Yeah, I mean, it's also really difficult because that takes away the incentive for this long journey that many founders are going on, and it's a challenge.
And last thing I want to say about this, like, we get invited into a ton of proposals. Like, people love having us in their like big grant proposals. We actually secured a huge grant of $1 million earlier in 2017. But we cannot actually receive any of that money, so it becomes very unattractive for us to participate, because we need to basically participate for free, because or we have to find some really complicated, convoluted structure to participate in like this public-private collaboration, and it's just mind-blowing.
It's creating a lot of roadblocks, clearly.
Yeah, well, it just makes it extremely unattractive, even for me, who has such deep ties with academia. I'm like, you know what, maybe you do this one on your own, because it's.
The ecosystem is really lucky to have you to share those learnings and to try to guide, founders how to navigate, and hopefully these tech transfer offices as well. Your feedback will be helpful. But Constantine, maybe just a really quick reaction from your perspective. Like, what are your thoughts on the Netherlands' ability to compete, given that so much capital in the other countries, such as the States, is going towards deep tech? How do you look at it for us?
Yeah, so we have a growing venture capital sector that's focusing on deep tech, but it's still pretty small. And all of the points that Dirk raised are really relevant. And I think if I now take a more government perspective on this, and also perspective of the universities, you have to look at what you want to achieve. So if you do want to achieve sizable businesses that are successful, that's the perspective you have to take. It's not pushing more science. That's really important. Invest in science, but if you want to transfer that science into the business, you then have to step to the other side and look back. So what do I need? What do these scientists need? What do the entrepreneurs need? And maybe also look around where this has actually been solved to some degree, because it's complicated. We understand that. And Leuven has a very good proposal. They actually took the Cambridge model as their key example. We know in Switzerland that they have been solving some of those issues. Boston obviously has a good reputation, MIT, also Stanford University. So there are solutions there. And what's holding us back is really a culture which says that entrepreneurship and spinning out business is really cool, and it's something that belongs to a university practice, in which the university is one actor, but there are other actors like investors, and then and there are even the city, because there's real estate involved and
ecosystem.
So all of that, and you have to be proud of the business that come out, and not because somebody is spending a lot of research money that often is public in the beginning, and then actually takes it private and becomes successful. That's a bad thing. We should celebrate it, and then make sure that the money starts flowing back into science, into business, into people that will fuel the next round, because that's where the impact's made.
I think that's a really interesting consideration also in standardizing a bit, these commercial approaches and when these university spin-outs happen, so that there is this sort of equal distribution and value, and that not only do the founders achieve success, but the universities, and that can sort of fuel future programs and hopefully future spin-outs.
One really short note, because I know we're running out of time, but from an investor perspective, at Series A, the founders still need to have at least 50%. So universities should consider, if they already take a large chunk, like really early on, that you will never be in that situation at Series A, and that then it's impossible for the company to raise future rounds.
This is such an important point. So many companies get stuck because of their funding structure. And one of the most essential things is give the founder control.
Yeah, I have to say we see a lot of deep tech startups through Operator Exchange looking for their earliest funding rounds, and we oftentimes will say no because we see that 25 to 30% is already going to the university in that earliest stage, and we just realize that dilution is going to be very demotivating over time. So a good call to action for the Tech Transfer Office. I know Techleap is already doing some work to try to create
yes, and the universities with the impact, science to impact are really engaged, and we're seeing a hopeful trajectory there.
Great. Wrapping up this topic, we will be diving deep into this also in a breakout session. So those of you who are interested, please join that one. And I think we all know that government also has quite a role to play. We are really excited that Prime Minister Mark Rutte has recorded a message. So why don't we have a look at that and see what he has to say?
Hello, everyone. With the pandemic raging, 2021 was a challenging year for us all. But despite the difficult circumstances, the Dutch tech sector still managed to make it a great success. We saw a tripling of investment, even more unicorns, and an 8% rise in new jobs. Those are achievements to be proud of, and perfect proof of the power and resilience of the Dutch tech sector. That's good news for all of us, because startups bring innovation to the market, create future jobs, and help safeguard our strategic and technological autonomy. In the long term, startups and scale-ups can help us make essential transitions in areas like climate change, sustainable energy, digitalization, and the circular economy. So it's clear that technological enterprise is shaping our future. That's why I'm proud to be speaking to you today as a strong supporter of the work Techleap and its partners are doing. But I know that government has a job to do too. The Netherlands is well placed to become one of the best countries in the world to start and grow a tech company. We just need to go that extra mile to unlock our full potential. That's why we have specific plans to educate more people to work in tech, and will be investing more in R&D. We've also appointed a dedicated state secretary for digitalization. So I can assure you, government will play its part in ensuring a vibrant, inclusive and groundbreaking Dutch tech sector for a sustainable future. Together with all of you.
Amazing. So we've heard from Prime Minister Rutte that he realizes the potential for the ecosystem and the important role that government has to play. Sounds like he's committing to supporting that. So we've got it on videotape. And we also actually have a message from Techleap's key partners, another key group within this stakeholder of the ecosystem. So let's have a look at that video as well. We celebrate our success, but we also sense the urgency to push harder to get the flywheel spinning. More startups growing into scale-ups, exiting and creating new founders and investors, attracting more diverse talent into the tech sector, to develop and build the Dutch solutions to the hardest societal and environmental challenges. The time to act is now. We're in the business of taking leaps. Are you ready to think bigger and take the leap with us?
I commit to providing the best mentoring and connections for startups.
Hi, this is Corinne from TomTom. I pledge to keep investing in the local youth for the local tech job with Coda, to keep investing in the tech community as I've done so far, and I've no doubt that next European tech giant will come out of Holland. And thank you, big shout to Techleap and the team for all the work they're doing to keep the ecosystem together.
At Innovation Industries, we commit to help founders to accelerate their business.
We've got the brains, we've got the ideas, we've got the entrepreneurs for successful startups and scale-ups in the Netherlands. And I will make effort to invest Dutch pension money in those ventures.
I commit to have a big impact on the planet by thinking big.
I commit to a competitive shareholder regime and want to work on early stage funding.
The universities of the Netherlands are fully committed to make science to impact a success.
BOM, the development agency of Brabant, is one of the largest providers of risk, capital and support to startups in the deep tech sector in the Netherlands. Join us. It's not only rewarding, but it's also essential for the strength of our economy now and in the future.
I call on all the banks to continue to ignore startups. Why? More business for bank. Thank you, guys.
Let's get together and make the Netherlands the best place for tech entrepreneurs. We can do this.
I love the energy at the end of that. Constantine, so we've heard the ambition of Prime Minister Rutte and our key partners. I'm curious, what is Techleap going to do? But first, we're going to ask our audience to be a little bit interactive, and we've got a poll that you can respond to while Constantine is giving us his answer on what Techleap will do. So the question to you, the audience, what should Techleap be doing? Constantine, what will Techleap be doing?
So yeah, we're actually shifting a bit from a problem-oriented organization that kind of identified the bottlenecks that we are addressing, and we'll continue doing that, obviously, but to engaging much more with the community, because we believe that when there's a strong entrepreneurs community that's supporting each other, we need less support of external parties. I think most of the knowledge about the tech system, about building businesses, investing in business, is actually with the entrepreneurs. So we need to have more knowledge sharing among them. We will be providing a lot of data, so we're building a dashboard as well, so that we can actually monitor what's going on in the Dutch ecosystem on a daily basis, and that will be delivered this year. We will continue, obviously, on the share options until they're there, and we want a kind of an early stage kind of a fiscal guarantee rule for early stage investment. And that's something that we really will continue to work on. And then diversity. I think diversity is a really challenging topic. It's not always within the scope of Techleap, because there's a lot of education there as well, but we think it's highly strategic for our successful scale-ups to have an open, diverse culture, because that's the only way that you'll attract the right people, right talent, but also the right number of talent, because once you're growing internationally, you will have to also employ people from other countries, speaking other languages, and then if you have a very monocultural situation within your company, you just will not succeed. So it's something that is highly strategic. Diversity is highly strategic and important, but also societally speaking, if this tech sector is growing and much more jobs will be tech, it's just unacceptable that big slices of the community, women, but also minorities, are not included in that development. So
we need to really close that opportunity gap.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think one of the first things that's necessary is also the scope of data around, diagnosing the problem. I think on the gender side, we're starting to get more numbers around funding and representation within STEM. From an ethnicity perspective, that's something a conversation that still needs to happen.
We need more data. And then finally, obviously, deep tech, if we really want to achieve all those transitions, it's not going to be the universities, it's not going to be only the big companies or the government, it's actually going to be startups that are going to drive these disruptive changes that we want, and therefore we need to invest more in them. So deep tech is going to be one very important part of our agenda.
You heard it here. I can't quite read the answers to what Techleap would focus on, so maybe Dirk or Constantijn can share that for the audience.
Looks like the biggest category is early stage funding with 24.4%. And I think share options regulations is the second biggest one with, others.
Other.
That's a really interesting category.
It looks like they want you to focus on a lot.
Oh wait,
it's
still changing. Still changing.
Well, we'll maybe have towards the
No,
end
but
of
it's pretty
this,
clear, it's share options, it's early stage, it's diversity, this is the topics that we would typically also...
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. That means
great
that
endorsement.
The great thing that it means that it's very, reflective of what the topics that we're highlighting today are really reflective of what people think the ecosystem needs to focus on. So Techleap is already at the forefront if you're diagnosed those issues already. So that's great.
And since we're making calls today of action to different parties in the ecosystem, I would like to also make the call to action to Techleap to not focus on ending in like 1 or 2 years.
Right.
Yes.
I think we need Techleap for the next at least 10 years, so maybe we can start making plans for that.
Maybe in perhaps a different form. I know it's sort of evolved into Techleap. It could evolve into something new after that, but I agree. I think
I think it's a very important element,
Yeah.
and I think it has really driven
This
the
was not
ecosystem.
scripted.
No,
this
I
is
know.
No, but I
I'm
agree
putting
too.
you on the
It's the
spot
same.
already.
Yes, it would be such a pity if it would stop in a few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think the having a sort of complementary approach of creating these ways for founders
You want
to
me
sort
to
of serve.
leave the table?
No, you keep trying to go. No, you got to stay here for one more minute. But yeah, I think it's you have done an incredible job over these last 2 years, and I'm sure will continue to do in the last 2 years of the current iteration. And it will be great to see how you're able to connect the ecosystem to each other and create these sort of peer networks for this knowledge transfer. So I'm excited for that next iteration. We're going to do one more poll. I think
We did it.
Yeah. Wow, great.
What will you
So the
commit
question to the audience was, what will you commit to? Constantijn, or Dirk, can you see the...
Go ahead.
Again, it looks
Up
quite
my game,
related.
thinking bigger. That's the and then the other big category is help turning science and technology into successful businesses. So we have deep tech transfer, and ambition and vision as the two leading categories.
Ambition. So we did our job well, I think, in hammering down that point. Think bigger, be more ambitious, and that's for every stakeholder group that's in the audience today. And I think I would love to wrap it up at this point. So Constantijn, you can leave in 30 seconds. But thank you so much, Janneke, Dirk, Constantijn, for your time today. And we're going to be breaking out into more deep dive sessions. One on funding unicorns, the next on Dutch LPs, another on scaling deep tech. And Janneke and Dirk, you're going to be staying here with me to talk about employee ownership and options. So time to ignite and move on to our next phase. And good luck getting to your next room in 30 seconds.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's wrap it up. What have we learned? This is our time. This is our turn. We're at the point of no return. spark and let it burn. It's time that we think big, pay it forward, take the risk. We can do this, we can do it if we want. But we have to come together. Government, startups, investors, let us put in all the effort. Let us make it through the desert. All these long days and nights, through the lows and through the highs. We will make our future bright. Let's unite to ignite.
I guess they'll tell us when So, wow, this has been an amazing event, a lot to take in, really great discussions. I really would love to hear, I wasn't able to sit in on your session, but what are some of your reflections from today?
Well, I think a lot has been discussed, a lot of people joining also into the discussion. I think a few learnings. I think one thing I learned today was really that, for example, pension funds have still some, what I would call PTSS from previous investments 10, 20 years ago, and need to slowly grow into funding the VC asset class. So I think that's a good learning, and we did quite some deep dive on what we should do more. On other sessions, we heard about how important it is for Techleap to organize learnings between entrepreneurs, make sure that we get entrepreneurs talking to each other and bring it forward. A lot of attention, I think, for diversity and inclusion. Make sure that we use the talent, the full talent base that there is. Make sure they all get opportunity to work in the tech sector where the future of Holland is. So these are just a few of the takeaways, but much more, and we're going to share it, of course, on our social channels afterwards.
Exciting. I mean, I think what I loved about this session is that it was also really practical steps that can be taken. And so it's not only focusing on some of the opportunities to improve ourselves, but what are some of the concrete things that we can be doing? And I think that there's takeaways for investors, for founders, for government, for partners of Techleap, and obviously for Techleap itself. But at least during our sessions, the main takeaway was Techleap should not dissolve, and it should continue on going, and maybe perhaps a different iteration. But that's something for another time. But I have had such an amazing time. Thank you for hosting this. And thank you to all of you in the audience who have sat with us and engaged in interactive discussions with us through the polling and Q&A. And see you next year for 2023.
And let's act now. I think that's a call to action.
Think bigger.
Yes, think bigger.
Ignite.
Okay.
We got that fire, we got light. We just need to take the leap and ignite.